Hello everyone, welcome to the second part of unit number 10's video, The World is Too Much with Us. It's a poem written by William Wordsworth. I'm Sadia Malik, and this is based on the first year English textbook prescribed by KPK Textbook Board for the year 2020-2021. Please subscribe to my channel to view more videos related to the first year English compulsory course. So in this video, we'll be focusing on literary devices, but the first question might be that what are literary devices? Literary devices are little techniques that poets use to make their poems richer, clearer, because they are talking about an abstract idea. So what they want is you to have a very clear picture in your mind of what they are talking about. And for that, they need to employ different devices. Now, some are very common and you must have heard of them. They are called similes and metaphors and personification. But some are a little more advanced, and because now you are in first year, so you need to step up as far as your poetic knowledge is concerned about literary devices. So as far as this poem is concerned, you can find a lot of different types of literary devices here. So we are going to focus on the ones which are more common. So the first one is something called a caesura. Caesura sounds a little difficult, but you can easily understand it by saying it's an abrupt stop. It can be a full stop, it can be a semicolon, it can be an exclamation mark, and it comes right in the middle of a line. Usually when poets write, the line is complete and they usually end it with a comma at the end of the verse. But a caesura is basically an abrupt stop which comes in the middle of a line. And as you can see in this poem, if you can see the first line, the world is too much with us, late and soon, gathering and spending. So with us, obviously, there's a semicolon here. So this shows a break in the line. So this is what a caesura is. And then if you look at line number 9, it moves us not, full stop. Great God, exclamation mark. So these are also examples of caesura. Caesura is a break in the line. And this also shows you the frame of mind of the poet, that what he's thinking. And usually when the poets use caesura, they are not in a very calm mood. They are not happy. They are not peaceful. So there's something really serious going on. And this also tells you the state of mind of the poet, that he is not happy with something and he's traumatized, or maybe he's feeling saddened about something. So usually the poets usually use caesuras. So here you can see a caesura in line number 1 and line number 9. Next come personification. It is something that you've already talked about in your previous grades. Personification is the attribution or giving the human characteristics to the elements of nature. For example, you can say that the moon was smiling. So the moon usually don't smile because obviously it's an inanimate object. But when you give it a human quality of smiling, so you personify it. So it's usually giving human characteristic to something which is non-human. So in line number 5, 6, and 7, sea, wind, and flowers have been personified. So let's see, in line number 5, you can see the sea that bears her bosom to the moon. So obviously sea here has been personified as a woman, more like a mother who is trying to touch the moon. In the next line, the winds that will be howling. Howling is something that is related to animals only, but this characteristic has been attributed to wind, that the wind is sounding like as if somebody is howling. So that is a personification. And then in the next line, sleeping flowers. Obviously, flowers don't sleep. Sleep is something which is more like an animal characteristic or a human characteristic. But when you give this human characteristic to an inanimate object, then you personify it. So these are the example of personification. Now, why use personification? The poet has to use personification because we are human beings and we understand emotions which are like our emotions. So when you say the sea is turbulent or rough, maybe that is not very clear. But when you say the sea is bearing her bosom to the moon, so it creates a image in your mind in which you have waves coming in great height and trying to touch the moon. Similarly, when you say there was a lot of noise when the wind was going on, so it does not sound very poetic. But when you say the winds were howling, so it creates, number one, a poetic touch to the poem, and secondly, it brings to your mind the certain sound that is associated with it. So you can easily relate to it. The next literary device is a simile. Simile again is a very common literary device that you have been doing. Simile is basically a comparison of two things. And how it is different from a metaphor, that in metaphors you usually do not use like or as, but in a simile you use like or as. So in line number 7 again, there is a simile in which you are saying that up gathered now like sleeping flowers. So uh, the sea and the wind and all the other elements of nature, they have been similar, compared to something which is sleeping like flowers. So you are using a simile here. Please remember that in a same line, they can be different literary devices in work. So you have the same line in which you have a personification, and the same line you can have a simile or other elements of poetry as well. Now we move to the next one, alliteration. Alliteration is basically the occurrence of the same sound. If you want to go into great detail, alliteration can be further divided into two types. If you have a consonant sound repeated again and again, we call it consonance. For example, P, T, D, etc. These sounds are repeated again and again, so that is called consonance. But if the vowel sounds are repeated again, you call it assonance. But just to keep it simple, I'm just going to call it alliteration. So I have underlined them, or maybe bold them in purple, if you can see the colors here. We lay waste. So here you can see the W sound is very heightened, and then bears her bosom. Here the B sound is very clear. Then it moves us not. T sound is clear. We are out of tune. Again, the T sound is very clear. Great God, G sound, which is a hard G sound. And in the last lines, have sight of Proteus rising from the sea. So S sound is very prominent here. Or hear old Triton blow his wreathed horn. So here all the hard T and D sounds are very clear. Also, to tell you one another thing, that when the emotions are happy and when the poet is in a jovial mood, a cheerful mood, the sounds used are very soft. More S would be used, more L would be used, more M would be used, because they are called the liquid sounds and they make the poetry more poetic. But when the mood is off, when he's bitter and he's angry and he is sarcastic in mood and he's not happy with how things are going, you would have a lot of hard sounding alliterations coming. For example, the G sound of G is a hard G sound, or for other matter, the T sound or the D sound, they are very hard sounding consonants. So when these come in, obviously it creates a very rigid kind of impression in your mind. It also shows you that the poet is not in a very good mood, so he's not happy with how things are. So poets just have words to tell you how they are feeling, so they use sounds to convey their meaning to you. They use all these literary devices to make it very clear to you what they are feeling. Next is imagery. Imagery is the overall impression of the poem that you get. And imagery is usually using all your five senses. So when you read something, if you can hear the sound, or if you can smell something, or if you can taste something while you are reading it. For example, if I say pickle and suddenly that taste comes into your mouth, so that is me using imagery, that something was as sour as a pickle. So suddenly the thing becomes very clear to you. So same is using words to somehow using your five senses. So it is your hearing, your vision, your taste, your sense of smell, your sense of touch. So all these five senses are taken into work. And here also there are different instances in which the poet is using imagery. Winds that will be howling, obviously you're using your sense of hearing. And then sleeping flowers is more like a sense of touch. And then the sense of sight as Proteus rising from the sea. So you can actually imagine him coming out of the sea like Aquaman. So all this, what this does is that it makes something very abstract, like words on a paper, coming alive and talking to you. So it creates picture in your mind. And that is the sole reason of poetry, that when the poet talks to you, he talks to you in words. There are no pictures, but the words create pictures in your mind, and you are able to understand what the poet is trying to say. The next literary device in enjambment. Enjambment, we can, in common language or easy language, we can call it run-on lines. Run-on lines is when the line does not stop at the end, but it continues in the next line. Usually what we do is we usually end the line with a comma. You can see soon and then comma, powers and semicolon, hours and semicolon, boon, exclamation mark. So there's some sort of punctuation given at the end. But then suddenly there comes a line after which there is no punctuation. So it means that you need to continue reading it through. For example, here, this line. This is an example of enjambment. Enjambment is when the verse does not come to an end at the end of the line, but it rolls over to the next line. For example, if we are supposed to read this, we are going to say, "Great God, I'd rather be a pagan suckled in a creed outward." So you're not going to stop at B. You're going to continue with the line and you're going to finish at outward. And that is where you're going to take a pause, because you can see there is no pause. Comma means a small pause. So there is no comma at the end of this line here. So this is an example of enjambment. Enjambment is where you do not stop, but you continue with the next line. The last literary device is allusion. Allusion is whenever you refer to some figure, some person, some mythical creature, some cultural person, some political event in poetry. So, but that brings in your mind an image of something. For example, if I say Waterloo, Napoleon Bonaparte comes to your mind. When I say Sheesh Mahal, so suddenly Lahore comes to your mind. Whenever I say a certain person or a political or a historical event, that brings to your mind the whole context, the whole literary significance. So this poem also contains two allusions to the Greek mythology, and the first one is Proteus. Have sight of Proteus rising from the sea, or hear old Triton blow his wreathed horn. So I have taken here two pictures just to make you clear what we are talking about here. So this is Proteus. Proteus was a god of sea. As I told you, pagans used to believe in all natural things having their own gods, and they used to pray for it. And the father was Poseidon. Poseidon was the big god of oceans, and he has two sons. One of the son was Proteus. So he looked like this, half man and half fish, and he used to live in the ocean. And the other son was Triton. He also used to live in the ocean. So they were both like gods of the sea, gods of the ocean. And you can see that they have this trident in their hand, something that you must have recently seen in the Aquaman movie. So trident is something very famous as far as the Triton is concerned. They usually have this in their hand, that this shows how powerful they are and they rule over the seas. And the Greeks were very afraid of them, and whenever the sea was in a bad mood, for example, if there was a storm, etc., so they used to pray to these gods, and they used to ask for mercy so their ships are not sunk or the people do not die. So these are the different literary devices. Just to go back: caesura, personification; simile, alliteration; then you have imagery; and then you have enjambment; and last of all, you have allusion. So that's it, and don't forget to subscribe to my channel. Also give a thumbs up if you like the video, and also press the bell icon so the next time I upload a video, you get the notification. Thank you so much.